वेलकम बैक दोस्तों। पिछले वीडियो में हमने सीखा फोर्क के बारे में एंड आज की वीडियो में वी विल लर्न अबाउट अनदर टैक्टिकल थीम विच इज कॉल्ड एज द पिन। अब व्हाट इज पिन? इफ आई अगर मैं बहुत आसान भाषा में बताऊं तो पिन एक ऐसी सिचुएशन होती है जहां पे हम हमारे ओपोनेंट के पीस को मूव करने से रिस्ट्रिक्ट करते हैं। सो इफ यू लुक एट दिस पोजिशन, ये दोनों जो नाइट्स है ऑन C6 एंड F6 रिस्पेक्टिवली, these knights are not able to move because अगर हम ये knight कहीं भी move करें, like if we move it to any square, what will happen is that you are exposing your queen, which is a more valuable piece. So we can understand pin as a situation जहाँ पे you are you are attacking a high valued piece, but एक minor piece उसको block कर रहा है. So it is a situation where your minor piece is blocking an attack to a major piece. Now, when I said कि it restricts your piece movement, but in this case हम तो अपने घोड़े को चल सकते हैं. Now, ये जो घोड़ा है हमारा C6 में, हम इसे मूव नहीं कर सकते because this is pinned to the king, and we know that in chess, that the king cannot that you cannot capture the king, that you have to checkmate it, and moving this knight is illegal. So this brings us to the concept that there are two types of pins. One is absolute pin and the other is relative pin. Now, as the term suggests, आपने guess कर ही लिया होगा. So एक absolute pin तब होता है when you are pinning any of the piece to the king, because in an absolute pin the movement of this piece, ये घोड़ा यहाँ पे नहीं हिल सकता है. It cannot move at all. Now relative pin में क्या होता है? It is this example जहाँ पे हम अपना घोड़े को तो हिला सकते हैं, but moving this knight would lead you to expose a more higher value piece, that is a major piece. So अगर आप ये घोड़ा यहाँ पे मूव करते हो कहीं भी, you will lose the queen. So this is what pin is all about. And again, जैसे हमने पिछले वीडियोस में किया है, I will take you through 20 puzzles to help you understand the theme of pins and help you understand कि हम pins को use कैसे करते हैं. And trust me, pins are very helpful in games because there are some examples where you can where there are some nasty pins that can actually make you win games. So without let's straight dive into the puzzles, and I would again request you कि आप pause करके खुद try कीजिएगा before looking at the solution. So in this position it is white to move. We are an exchange down. It is a bishop versus rook end game. But what we do is we see कि ये जो king and rook है, it's in the same diagonal, the dark square diagonal from a1 to h8, and we have a dark square bishop over here on d2. So what do we play? Bishop c3, pinning the rook and the king. And ये rook जैसे हमने सीखा, it's an absolute pin. ये rook नहीं हिल सकता है. In the next move we just capture the rook and white is simply winning. Moving on, in this position again it is white to move, and we use the same theme जो हमने पिछले वाले puzzle में सीखा था. The move is bishop to c4, pinning the rook on d5, and you just win the rook in the next move. Moving on, in the next puzzle, it is white to move, and again the same theme, bishop c5, pinning the rook and winning the king. Pinning the king pinning the rook to the king, and we win the rook in the next move. Moving on, in this puzzle, it is white to move, and I hope you were able to solve this position. If we see that the seventh rank, the queen and king are in the seventh rank, and white has this brilliant move rook to b7. The bishop is protecting the rook, and it's in the same line as the queen and the king, and black has no option but to give away the queen for a rook, and you are a exchange up because you have won the queen for a rook. Moving on, in this position it is white to move. This is an example of two rooks versus the queen, which is considered as equal. But white has a very nasty move here, and the move is queen to c3, pinning the rook to the king. And in the next move you win this rook because black इसको defend नहीं कर सकता है. Now in the moving on, in this position it is white to move, and आप देखिए it's the same theme. हमारा knight and the king are in the 7th rank, and white just plays this move rook to c7, and black loses this knight because the king cannot defend it. It is two squares away, and there is no other piece that can defend the knight. Moving on, it is white to move. हम देखें, आप देखो, in all the puzzles the theme is same. In this position white plays the move rook to h4, pinning the bishop, and there is no way black can save the bishop. So क्या होगा? Subsequently in the next move you will win the bishop and it's game over. यहाँ पे it is white to move, and it's a very simple puzzle. I am sure आपने ये solve कर ही लिया होगा. It is the move bishop to b5, pinning the queen to the king, and there is no way black can save the queen. It has to take the bishop, and you are a complete queen up for a bishop, and that is just simply winning. Moving on, in this position it is again white to move, and it is the same theme like we've done in the previous puzzles. The answer is rook to g7, pinning the queen and the king, and there is no piece जो बीच में आ सकता है in these squares, and neither can the rook be captured. So the only move for black over here is to take the rook, and white is a complete rook up now, because in the initial position uh, white had two rooks for a queen, but black did not see this, that there's this rook g7 which is pinning the king and the queen, and ultimately white wins. Moving on, Abhi, in all the previous puzzles, what we have seen is that all the pins were absolute pins. That is, हम piece को नहीं move कर सकते थे because they were all pinned to the king. Now in this puzzle, it is white to move, and over here, can you find the relative pin over here? The answer is bishop to f4, pinning the rook to the queen, and it's not that we cannot move the rook. हम rook बिल्कुल हिला सकते हैं, हम कहीं भी जा सकते हैं. This rook can move to any square, but what will happen is that once you move the rook, you expose your queen, and we all know that the queen is more valuable. So white is just winning the exchange over here. Moving on, in this position, it is white to move, and I'm sure you have found the solution. We take the use of this dark square diagonal, and how do we do that? By putting a bishop on f4, pinning this knight, and there is no way black can defend this knight, and ultimately in the subsequent move we will win this knight. Moving on, in this position it is white to move, and I hope आपने ये guess कर लिया होगा that this is a very it's a rook pawn endgame, and the move here is rook to e1. We are pinning this pawn, and in the next move we just win this pawn. यहाँ पे black to move, and again we take help of this light square diagonal here, bishop to c6, pinning this rook, and in the next move we win this rook. Now in this position it is black to move, and again taking help of this diagonal, bishop to g5, pinning the queen to the king, and we win the queen in the next move. In this position it is black to move. Can you find the move? Again, it's the same concept, the same theme. We take the help of this diagonal and we play this move queen to b6, and we are pinning this knight over here. The knight cannot move because of this pin. And how does black save this knight? How does white save this knight? There is no option for white. uh, Queen यहाँ पे आ सकता था, but our rook is guarding this square, so white will have to give up this knight in the next move. Moving on, यहाँ पे it is black to move, and it's a very simple one. Rook to d1. We are pinning this bishop, and the only way to save this bishop is rook coming to e5, which is being guarded by a pawn over here. So ultimately, we win the bishop in the next move. Now, in the last 3 or 4 positions, you have to find a combination of moves जहां से आप पिन यूज कर सकते हो. So यहाँ पे हम देख सकते हैं that it is a rook versus bishop, but can you use pins to win this bishop? And the solution is very easy. We first play this check, rook b8. It doesn't matter where the black king goes. We then just play rook to b7, and there is no way how black can save this bishop. And ultimately, we win this bishop and the game. Moving on, in this position, again, it is right to move. It is a queen versus two rooks. But can you see that all these files are completely open? So, what is the best way to take advantage of this? We play rook f to d1 check. The king cannot go to this the c file because of a rook over here. So it has to move somewhere, king e8 or king e7. Wherever it moves, we just have this move rook e1, pinning the king and the queen. So the important part over here was अगर हम ये rook से check देते, so the king was not forced to come over here. The king could have gone this way, and then then the story would have been something else. So that's why it was important to play this rook f to d1 check, forcing the king to come in the in this file, that is the e file, and then you put the rook here, pinning the queen. Moving on, यहाँ पे हम देख सकते हैं it is white to move. And did you notice that in this position, if the black king was on this square and if the bishop was over here, we could have pinned this queen. So can we get the black king here? Yes, we can, because we played this check queen to g8. And why is this check a very great move? Because not only it forces the king to come here, but it also, you know, it gives an additional support to the g1 square. So यहाँ पे the black king has to move to a7. There is no other option it has. And then we simply put this bishop on g1 here, taking the help of this dark square diagonal and ultimately winning the queen. Moving on to the last puzzle of the day. It is again white to move, and it's the same theme as the previous one. We play this check, queen to d8. The king is forced to come here because any of these moves just simply loses the piece. And once the king comes here, we simply play queen to d3, pinning the rook, and in the next move, we win the rook. So guys, this was all about pins. I hope मैं आपको समझा पाया what is a pin, how to make use of a pin, and about absolute pins, relative pins. So uh, in the upcoming videos, we will learn about more different themes in chess and different tactics. Uh, Thank you and happy learning.